Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to another episode from the Azure Happy Hour series. My name is Rashmita, and I am the event planner for Microsoft Reactor India. I'm here today joined by our very own host, Reshmi, and our special guest speaker, Tulika. But before we start the session, I would request you all to read our code of conduct. We are all here to learn together, so please be respectful of other people's views, understanding of differences, being kind and considerate in the way you engage. The chat section is open throughout, and we do encourage you all to participate. Our speakers will answer all your questions during the session, so please feel free to drop all your questions in the chat section. With this, thank you all once again for joining us today, and let me bring in Reshmi into the stream to begin the session. Hey, how are you, Reshmi?
Hi Rashmita, I'm good. Good evening. How are you?
I'm doing all good, excited as usual.
Also, yeah, of course. Today, today the speaker that we have, we do not even have to introduce her because that's the number of sessions that we have done with her, and we have seen from time and again that people really enjoy whatever she's present. So I think I don't want to waste any time on what she is, how she does. I can just like bring her on stage and she can already set it on fire. So I'm really excited for today's session. So thank you once again to everyone from the world who has joined us right now. And with that, I think Rashmita, we can start off. So let's quickly bring in Tulika. Hi
Yeah.
Tulika, once again.
Reshmi. Hi, Rashmita. How are you guys doing?
All great. Actually, I'm very surprised. I did not notice this. It looks like you are in a room which is completely themed with what you're wearing. Like everything is just themed. Wow. Do you
I did
get to
not notice
customize
that
your
too.
robes? Wow. Okay. So cool. Tulika, thanks again for joining us. I know it's probably your end session with the Happy Hours panel. So thank you so much for taking our time. I know the topic that we have at stake today is really interesting, but just for the interest of people who might be dialing in for the first time today and listening about what you're going to present, maybe we can start off by a very, very quick one-liner of who you are, what you do, and what we're going to present.
Sure. So I'm Tulika. I'm a product manager for Linux App Service. I work out of India in Bangalore. And today I'm going to talk about using Azure OpenAI and how to integrate it with your Python app and deploy it to app service. And I'm sure that OpenAI does not need an introduction. So we'll quickly go through some slides that I have, but mainly it'll be, showing what the AI Studio looks like, how can you deploy an app, and so on.
Awesome. Cool. So I think this is something which people pretty much like developers for that matter use on a day-to-day basis, and they would be really, really interested in listening to anything to do with Azure OpenAI, especially for the fact that all the integrations that we're providing as of today is going to make it as seamless as possible for their end-to-end journey. So I think we
Yep.
can already jump into it.
And I think OpenAI, as I said, needs no introduction.
Yeah.
So, OpenAI is a community initiative for artificial intelligence, and Microsoft is one of the partners for it. And we work closely with the OpenAI community to get in some of the models over there. And here I'm just listing some of the models that we have, like the GPT models, the Vision model, which we just
Tulika, I
recently.
might have to pause you just a bit if it's okay. If you can just like switch on to the presentation mode so that it's bigger on the screen.
Oh, I was doing a presentation. Sorry.
No worries.
Uh, okay. I am doing a presentation,
Oh,
actually.
I think the screen that's being shared and the screen which is being present in the presentation mode is probably different. So yeah, I
Uh,
think it's good. If people have comments on it not being visible clearly, maybe we can address it. But right now, I think it's good enough then. Yeah, we should good.
I can increase it a little bit over here if that makes any
Mhm.
difference.
Yeah, I guess. Okay.
Yeah, there is a way that, okay. Yeah, I don't know
Yeah, I
how to
think
bring it on the same screen.
Yeah,
And
I think it's because it's an extended screen or something. Do not
yes.
bother. I think we should just continue. Yeah.
Okay, so over here, so OpenAI is something that Microsoft has a partnership with, and we have several models available for the Azure AI Studio, like the GPT models, the Babbage model, the Da Vinci, DALI, Whisper. And these are again models or large language models which are uh, pioneered by OpenAI, but Microsoft has been a significant contributor to these models, and we are integrating it into the Azure AI Studio. And today I'll be showing, some of the things that you can do with Azure AI Studio. So the use cases, and again, I'm sure that given that in the last 3 months we have had more than 100 million people sign up for Azure OpenAI, I think most people know it, but still running through this very quickly. So some of the top use cases for Azure OpenAI is one is content generation. So Open GPT models are very good at creating content which is new based on existing inputs. So some of the examples for that is you could have like a call center and you could be doing some analytics on it based on the calls that you get. So your OpenAI system can, look at the call center data, read the transcripts of the call, summarize the calls, and even generate things like, are our customers generally happy? Are they, why are they calling in the first place? And so on. We also have summarization. That's one of the key functionality. That is, you give it a large period, portion of text, and it can generate a summary for you. We also have code generation, and I'm sure a lot of people would be familiar with the GitHub Copilot and its integration with VS Code and Visual Studio. So you can now generate your code, and you can convert, you can give it voice commands, or you can just write text to it and it'll convert it into code. And finally, we have the semantic search, where you can feed it documents which is very specific to your organization, and it can do a search on it and generate an index and retrieve things for you. So in the next few slides, I just have, a couple of like how it is done. For example, the document process automation. And like we have to keep in mind that when we start building systems, none of these systems are actually working in isolation. So if you're saying that you're building an OpenAI system, you're probably not building an isolated system. So over here, this is an example of a document process automation where you can, send some documents to the Azure Form Recognizer or a PDF OCR pipeline, and the cognitive services search can pick up documents from that, create an index on the document, and you could have a function app which goes and triggers every time a document is posted, and you have an OpenAI service which can look at the document and give some summarization to a web application or to a Power BI, which is running in the front end. You could have something like I mentioned the call center or the contact center analytics. So here, for example, the diagram shows that somebody can call to the call center, have a conversation with the agent. Once the conversation, since it is using some kind of telephony automation system, we can store the entire conversation transcript in Azure Storage as an audio file, which then can be fed into cognitive services as speech to text. And it could do some intelligent transcription in terms of measuring customer sentiment, any kind of trend analysis, that we are getting more calls once we release this feature. And it will give you a detailed call history, summaries, any reasons why the call is happening. Now, previously, and I have worked in contact center before, earlier we used to have like entire teams which would do this. They would sit and listen to like thousands of hours of calls, transcript the calls manually, and then try to do a sentiment analysis and generate some kind of intelligence from it. And now you can just feed it to an intelligent system, and that will do all that for you automatically. My third example is how you can use AI over enterprise data sources. And this is important because sometimes your data is not just you don't want your system to go out and get data over the internet. You have data in the organization itself. It could be like documents which is very specific, health plans for example, which are specific to your organization, and you don't want it to search over the internet. So in that case, you could have your AI engine work on documents which is within your organization, within your document library, and based on that it can do a search on it. It can analyze the document, create search indexes, and now when you ask a question, it will go over those search indexes and give you some information. So don't worry, like I know these look more complex than they really are, and we'll see examples of some of these just in a little bit. So the other thing that I want to mention over here is Azure.
Oops. Okay. Maybe Tilika just had a screen sharing problem. We can give it a couple of minutes and she could join back. But meanwhile, for the folks who are there in the meeting, I know you might have questions. So please feel free to keep pouring the questions. We will wait for Tilika to dial in. And if you have any resources that you would like to use, I think you should always keep an eye out on the chat and also in the video later on, because these links will be shared with you in the description of the video. So I see that Tilika's screen share is still on. Maybe she has not realized that she is currently not connected. So let's give it a couple of minutes. I'll quickly check with her. Okay, interesting. So while we are still live and waiting for Tilika to join, does anyone have any questions which I could probably pick up, like anything to do with what could be the next things that we want to work on happy hours? Oh, I think we already have Tilika back. So Tilika, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. I'm very sorry about this.
No worries. It's just I think I was destined to have like a solo screen share moment. So yeah, I had to be the only face on the screen. Cool. If everything is okay, let's probably continue back from the slide 7, if I remember the number correctly. I think that is where we kind of lost you.
Okay. And I'll have to open up the slides once again.
Yeah, no worries. And we do have one question in the chat as well, but maybe we can pick that question once you're done with the flow of the
Sure.
slides.
Yeah, while that slide is open, let me go ahead and jump right to the demo, and we can come back to the slides.
Okay, sounds good. In that case, do you want to pick the question first? I think
Sure.
it's more of a generic question. Maybe we can already address that. So,
Mhm.
Abhinash is asking, can we build an AI chatbot for lead generation? And if so, is there a roadmap for the same?
Yeah. Well, roadmap is harder to do. The problem is that we are still in the place where we are finalizing our use cases and building roadmaps for it. So some of the use cases that we have right now finalized and a roadmap is how do you use a chatbot over enterprise data. So a roadmap for actually having your organizational data and how do you go over it. I don't have a roadmap for a lead generation, but this is something that I can look out and check with our other colleagues to see if we have something like that.
Cool. Abhinash, please feel free to drop any follow questions if you have. We can probably address it in the rest of the session. But like Tulika mentioned, given that the team is a widespread team with multiple people playing around a different role to bring the product to success, I think the best bet would be for us to like probably double check and get back to you so that we do not give false commitments for the roadmap. So thank you so much for bringing that question and for the fact that you have highlighted this is something which actually matters to you. This helps in us to prioritize such features better. So, yeah, back to you, Tulika.
Okay, so I'm going to jump right into the demos. So first of all, whenever you start working with Azure OpenAI, the first thing you would have to do is create. You obviously need an Azure subscription, and you have to sign up for OpenAI. There's a form. If you go to the website, there's a form that you need to fill. We do want to mention that there are a lot of people who are trying to sign up. So, which means that it is like you have to fill a form. It's just not automatic. However, I want to say that I signed up, and it's pretty quick, just that you have to give a couple of days of lead time. So once you have signed up for it, you will get a resource in your Azure service, which is called Azure OpenAI. So you can click on the Azure OpenAI resource. And over here, you will see that you have a create button, which allows you to create an OpenAI resource. Now you can click on the create button over here, and that will bring you to the basic tab, how you create a resource. Again, I want to mention that this is very similar to what you would do if you want to create any Azure resource. So you specify your subscription, your resource group that you're going to use, the region in which you're going to use it, the name of the resource, and you're going to specify the pricing tier. Right now, we are offering just one pricing tier, which is the standard, but we are working on enabling other pricing tiers as well. So if you do all this, and you have to agree to our content review policies, because we want to make sure that we are doing AI, but we want to be responsible about it, and that's why we want you to sign up for responsible AI as well. So I'm not going to create a resource right now because I had one created in advance, and I can go to the resource that I have created. So this is OpenAI resource. When you look at the resource, there's not much that you see over here. To actually do something on the resource, you have to create a deployment. A deployment is nothing but saying that this is the model that you want to use, and based on that, associating a name with the model. So you're creating a resource which is a model and what you're going to use it for. Now, as soon as you click over here, it will say that we want to take you to your managed deployments, which is your Azure AI Studio. So I have the Azure AI Studio open over here. And at Ignite, I don't know, Reshmi, were you following Ignite?
I mean, yes, of course, you were speaking. How will I not follow it? Yeah,
So
we
at
should have we
Ignite,
should have done a couple minutes over there also, couple minutes to talk about how I think I'm gonna do that towards the end. But yes, let's continue.
so you can create, like, you can use the new Azure AI Studio, which we just previewed at Ignite. I'm going to use the slightly older version of the AI Studio. And you can see that we have defined models over here. Now, as I was saying, a model has a model name, and it is the kind of model that you're using. So in this case, for example, this model is using GPT-3.5 Turbo Instruct. This is a model which is very good at doing semantic analysis. So that's why there is a model over there. It also gives you how many requests you can use with this model. And I've also created another model, which is the more latest model, which is the GPT-3.5 Turbo. In my subscription, and this region, I still don't have access to the GPT-4 model. And GPT-4 model, we are rolling out a little slower because it needs more CPU capabilities. But frankly enough, I've been using the 3.5 model, and it's pretty good. So, I know that GPT-4 can do things like dialects and slang and, a lot more analysis than GPT 3.5. But initially, I think to getting started, the 3.5 model is good enough. Now, so the easiest way to get started, and I'll show you several ways to get started. So I'm going with the easiest one. Now, remember, this was the service that I'd created. Over here, I'd gone to the playground. The playground is simply oaiazure.com. So that's your Azure playground. It is automatically linked to your subscription, which means any resource you create on the Azure portal is going to be visible here. I'm going back to my resource over here. And the reason I'm going back over here is now I want to use this in code. So ultimately, that's what you want to do, right? So to use this in code, we need two things. We need to know the keys that I'm going to use and the endpoint that I'm going to use. So you see over here, I went perhaps too fast. In the resource tab, I clicked on keys and endpoint. As soon as I click over there, it gives me an endpoint. In this case, this would be whatever name you give, .openai.azure.com. And it will give you the location, of course, and it'll give you some keys. Now, if you want to create an application which uses it, you want to use the endpoint and the key and then call a method on that API. So OpenAI is nothing but an API. So you simply call methods on that API. That's ultimately what we're doing. So I have over here a Python app that I created. Now, this is a very basic Python app. I just wanted to show a proof of concept than anything else. So first of all, we have released SDKs for all our various languages. So you have a Java SDK, you have a .NET SDK, you have a Python SDK. In this case, this is a Python app. I'm using a Python SDK. So a couple of things you have to do. Firstly, you have to remember the endpoint and the key. Now we have to map the endpoint and the key because this is the resource that we are going to use. So I'm creating an OpenAI client. I'm specifying the OpenAI endpoint and the key and an API version. As I mentioned, this is just an API. Every API needs an API version. Over here, I'm using environment variables because keep in mind that whenever you create an OpenAI resource, you also want to think about security. You do not want to share your OpenAI keys and endpoints with everybody because then people can abuse your OpenAI resource. So that is why I have it saved in an environment variable rather than directly using it. Uh, this is now just normal Python. I'm setting a route over here. And basically, it's a very simple basic app. All I'm saying is if you pass in some request argument, which I'm saying question, so you can pass in a question, and your OpenAI resource, I'm calling the client the OpenAI chat completions. I'm basically passing in that question and asking that question from OpenAI and getting an answer for it. Again, extremely simplistic. If you look at the application, it has like literally no code other than opening the OpenAI resource, calling a chat completions API. I will show you how it looks like. And again, I'm sorry, I did not create a whole lot of experience for it in terms of UI.
I think the
So
focus is to learn the end to end. So
yeah.
UI is probably not even the top concern for anyone at this point of time. So
Also, just to mention that I've deployed it to a web app. So I've deployed it to Azure App Service. It's the easiest way that you can run a Python app. You don't need to do that. You could have run that in a container app. You could have even done to a certain extent a function app. It's not very suited to function, but it's just a piece of code. You can run it anywhere. But web app would probably be the easiest that you can configure. I'm using VS Code over here. From VS Code, if you can use your Azure resource over here, and once you sign in to the Azure resource, you can directly publish from VS Code itself. So which means you don't even need to go out of your VS Code environment. And you can see over here that I've published my app. This is where I publish the app. Certain things that I want to point out. Remember all those environment variables I was talking about? I've saved it as environment variables for my app. So the OpenAI key, the OpenAI endpoint, that's what I'm going to use when I'm going to, call my thing. And this is one level of security. Now, since this is a web app, I've gone another level and I've also enabled easy auth on this web app, which means that if you try to access it from somewhere outside the organization, because I've given permission only to our org, so it means that nobody will be able to access this app. And again, I'm emphasizing these points is because when you start creating OpenAI thing. One is it's cool, you should experiment with it, but you should always think about how do you secure these resources and make sure that nobody is using it inappropriately. So anyway, this is my app. No interface to it, as I mentioned. I can ask it a question like, you know, a question which is just a query parameter. Remember, I was doing a request parameter. I can ask it what is an app service, for example, and it returns, it is making a call to OpenAI. I'm calling the chat completion method, as you saw, and it's giving a message back saying that, and it is generating a unique response. And that's what GPT is really good at, generating a
Mhm.
unique response based on all the searches it has done. In fact, if you run this again and again and again, you will probably get a different response every time, because uniqueness is one of the factors that they do with GPT models.
So at this point of time, because it's super basic, it's technically not going to be acting like a chat bot. It's more like the
Correct.
question memory is not gonna stay retained. It's
Yeah,
just those four questions that we have fed, but each of those questions are being fetched from the OpenAI.
correct. So now let's,
One more
yeah.
question on this. Okay, yeah, sorry. Continue. I can ask it later.
So I was saying that this is really basic, and I was, starting to move into something a little more complex. So if you have something on the basic, let's go ahead and do that.
Okay, awesome. There was just one very basic question I wanted to. Actually, a couple of them. Maybe one you would probably be addressing towards the end. But the first one being, we discussed very briefly in the start on what is Azure OpenAI. The question that
Mhm.
I had is the current code that we have, the integration we have done is with Azure OpenAI. But what exactly would the scenario be in case someone wants to integrate with a non-Azure OpenAI, like just with the OpenAI? Will we be doing the same integrations? Will it be as seamless as possible? And what are the perks that we are getting by integrating with Azure OpenAI instead of OpenAI?
Okay. So you can definitely integrate with OpenAI directly. Now, OpenAI has its own SDKs. So you would instead, so you see over here that in my code, I'm using from OpenAI import Azure OpenAI. So which basically means I am using a module which is provided by Azure. Now, if you do OpenAI directly, you can use the OpenAI module and you can import it, and that would just work. It works on the same principle that you'll have the OpenAI endpoint, the OpenAI key, and it's also basically an API that you call. Now, because we are using Azure SDK, in that case, these method signatures might differ, because these are some of the method signatures that we are using. So the method signatures, you'll have to read the OpenAI documentation to make sure that you're calling the right method. But beyond that, the things that we provide with Azure is, one is our integration. So over here, when I'm doing with Visual Studio, and I did not show that because I'm not using the GitHub Copilot right now, but I could. And GitHub Copilot will work with your Azure OpenAI. So if you want help on this, you'll get the all tab helps. You can chat with the Copilot, and it also has a seamless integration with some of our services. And I'll show you that when I'm showing the Azure AI Studio, on how you can, not only just generate code right in the studio itself, but even publish it to an Azure resource. And those are the integrations which the Azure OpenAI is going to help. But otherwise, if you just want to stick with OpenAI, you can, and you can, obviously deploy it to Azure or any other cloud. It doesn't matter. It's just that our integration story would be much more seamless if you use the Azure OpenAI.
Mhm. And just cherry on the top of the cake, Azure always ensures that your data, whatever is being worked on, whatever is being shared, queried, etc., is secure, right?
Yep,
So everything that is happening within that contained space.
yep,
Yeah.
yep.
Awesome.
Again,
Just one more question. Sorry, so sorry. What was the deployment slot setting again? I think I did not
so
capture that correctly.
these settings,
The
you're
deployment
talking,
slot settings?
no, these are not deployment slots. These are app settings. So what we did was,
Yeah,
remember,
what exactly is it though? Like
yeah.
why is there a deployment slot only for one of them?
So over here, so okay. Firstly, I'm setting an app setting because I want to create environment variables. I don't
Mm,
want to,
mm,
otherwise, if I hadn't, I would have to specify my endpoint and my key right over here in my code. And keep
mhm,
in mind that this code is running locally on my box and it's fine. But ultimately, I might be checking this into GitHub, which means
mm.
everybody will know what is my endpoint and what is my key, and that's
Yeah.
completely insecure. So
Mm,
to prevent that, what we should do is ideally have the key and the endpoint in a secure place. And we could do several things. We could put it in a key vault and then retrieve it from the key vault and do all that stuff. I did not
mhm,
do anything very complex about it. So all I did was create app settings. Now, app settings on
mhm,
Azure App Service translates to environment variables. So whatever you
mhm.
set in your application as app settings, when we start the process, we read these app settings and put into environment variables for your app. So
Understood.
that's what we are doing. And this
Mhm,
one is, we've specified it slot specific. So we have a concept of slots because we understand that people might want to test an application before they actually deploy code. So what we do is
mhm.
we allow people to create 3 to 4 slots together with your main application. And
Okay.
what we let you do is we let you deploy code to the slot, test it out because nobody is using that. That's not a public site, but it is just an app. So you go ahead and deploy the code. And then once you're satisfied that your code is working fine, you can swap your slot to be your main site. So in that case, you can specify that this app setting will apply to any slot that you create for this website. And you could have settings which is just individual to the slot, or you could have app
Got
settings
it.
that apply all throughout.
Got it. Got it. And the final question that I had, which I'm hoping will happen towards the end, is you would be sharing, like, where can folks find the code so that they can, like, repo and try it out as well
Yes,
for
yes,
the
I will.
example that you're showing? Okay.
Mhm.
Awesome. Cool. Yeah. Back to you. Thank you.
All right, so I'm going to now work on a little more complex example, and for that I'm going to use our deployment studio. Now again, some of you might have already played with it, and if you haven't, it's very cool. So over here, you can see our deployments. I just showed you that these are the models I've created. I'm going to use GPT-3.5 Turbo and GPT Turbo Instruct. Now, to use the models, you can directly use it in your code, just like I showed you earlier. You have the endpoint, you can call it in your code, but every time you have to do something like that, you have to write so much code, and that's cumbersome. So that is why Microsoft has also provided a playground in which you can test out what it looks like. So I'm first going to go to our deployments completion playground. Remember that the method that I was calling over here is called chat completions. So chat completion is you ask it a question and it will complete the question. So in other words, it's actually generating an answer for you. So I'm going to go ahead and go to our chat completions playground. And have you used this, Reshmi, before?
I've played with it, but I'm sure it's not going to be anywhere close to what you're going to demo today. So, yeah, super excited.
So first of all, if you want, you could, just use one of the examples we provide. And we provide a whole list of examples. I'm not going to use an
Mm-hmm.
example. I'm just going to start right over here. So I'm going to say, my company is launching a new coffee machine. I love coffee.
Wow. Okay. This is interesting.
So I can now click on generate. And it has generated a name for it. Now, I may like the name, I may not like the name, and if I don't like the name, I can regenerate. But let's
Mm-hmm.
say that I'm going to go with the name. And I'm going to say, okay, the name is fine. create or write an ad for my product.
Looks like we have lost Talika again, but she's still typing. So while she's working in ghost mode, let's just keep looking at the screen, I guess. So the people who are there in the call right now, if you have experience playing around with Azure AI Studio, maybe this is a time where you can discuss your experiences. Let us know how exactly did you like it and what feedbacks do you have in case you have tried it out and there are certain things which you would like us to improve. But other than that, if you haven't tried it yet, like Tulika mentioned, this was one of the Ignite announcements. It's still in preview. So definitely take out some time, check it out. You have so many powerful tools which are there handy to you with just one single playground and a lot of examples which have already been set together. So please take out some time, check it out, and let us know how the experience is. Cool and very timely. I think we have Tulika back. Hi,
I'm sorry.
Tulika.
So what I've done is I've removed my second screen. I'm like, this is creating too
Okay.
much problems. This is
Yeah.
not even worth it.
I think your system needs a coffee as well.
Yeah, I think so. So now you can share my screen, Reshmi, if you haven't done it already.
Yeah, I'll just wait for Rashmita to do the same. But this is good. I managed to not be awkward in the
Answer
last one
and
minute.
answer some of the questions which were there.
Sure. I think there is just one question right now in the chat which we can probably pick up. So
Mhm.
Darshan has asked us when will the new GPT-4 vision model be available on Azure?
So it is already available. You have to sign up for it. There's a separate form that you have to do if you want to use the vision model, and you can sign up for it. So it is available. It's not available for all regions. There's only specific. I think it's available in East US too, and one of the West US regions. But we are slowly adding more regions to it.
Okay, awesome. And Darshan has given us a good feedback as well that they would like to see the dark mode UI in the playground. I think that's a great feedback given that the focus is still on UX and not on the fact that probably the playground is not working to par. So thank you, Darshan, for your feedback and maybe we hope to see it soon implemented as well. So yeah, keep the feedback coming and Tulika, maybe whenever you're ready, we can work on resharing your
I'm
screen. We should be able to.
oh, okay. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's something I have to do. Sorry.
yeah,
I'm thinking, what do I have to do? Why am I doing this?
yeah. I really think it's time for Bean Talk. Awesome. Yeah, we can see the screen now.
Okay. So here I'm, going ahead with my conversation. I'm saying, okay, Beantalk is fine. Write an ad for my product targeting people who work from home, people like me. And see, it's generated an ad for me as well, you know, where it's telling me what I should say. I can even, if I want, I can say limit the ad to like 2 sentences, 3 sentences, and so on. I can go ahead and keep doing things like suggest some hashtags for this. And I can again say generate, and it will generate some hashtags for me too. And I think all this is pretty cool.
I think the job of a digital marketer is not there anymore.
But the thing that I really like about it is that I have the view code option right here. So I can click
Mhm.
on this. And now it has, remember that code that I created? It was actually created based on this. So you
Mhm.
can see that it has really generated the code together with the endpoint and the key that I would need to be using. And I can simply copy this and paste it in my, whatever editor I'm using, and just the code is going to run because it's generated based on what I just sent.
Mm-hmm.
I can even change this to say, oh, not Python, but C sharp, and it'll generate the C sharp code for me. So I think this
Mm-hmm.
feature, in fact, a lot of the development that we see customers who are doing, this is the starting point. This obviously is not your full application, but this can definitely be the starting point where it'll generate the code for you to get started, and then you can take it further on with your application.
Yep. Yep. I think that's a definite plus. And on the same lines, I think we have one more question in the chat. So Fuel Snable is asking if Python is being transpiled to JavaScript to be run in the browser. Would you be aware of that?
So over here we have different approaches for it, and I'll show you two approaches. In one, I am using JavaScript directly with Python, and in the other, I'm going to use a React front end. But it is like over here, this is JavaScript, but you can use whatever front end you want. So Python over here is primarily your backend, and you can choose to create a front end in whatever language that you would prefer to have your front end in. So I'm going to move to our chat playground. The chat playground is like, remember, this is just completions. Now, chat is, and
Mm-hmm.
Reshmi, you had asked the question that can I have the chat like full-fledged? And this is one way
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
you do it. So, first of
I
all,
think what we had in the completion as well, like at least for a certain extent, it did continue the conversation, right? It was not
sure.
like after every prompt it forgot what the previous prompt answer
Yes,
was.
yes. But however, the completions does not allow you to have a persona. So
Okay.
now maybe you want to create a chat application which has a persona. So you want to say,
Hmm.
okay, I have my chat bot, if you will, but my chat
Mm-hmm.
application which needs to have a persona of, I don't know, an astronomer. And then you feed it questions and it'll go ahead and give you results based on that persona. And a
Yep.
chat
Yep.
will let you do that. So if you go to your chat playground, the first thing is that you have to specify a system message. A system message
Mm-hmm.
is nothing but a persona that we are specifying. So you can give it some
Mm-hmm.
instructions that my chat, you have to behave like this, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can create your own example. So you can click on add example and you can have your own. But you can look at some of the examples that we have over here. For example, let's say a hiking recommendation. And now, if you look at the system message which has been created, it says, okay, it has given the
Mm-hmm.
name to the persona, which is called Forest. It has given some instructions to the persona. So every time somebody ask them where they are located, what kind of hiking intensity they are looking for. And then based on that, provide three suggestions. So it's also limiting how many suggestions you want to provide with it.
Mm-hmm.
And that allows you to control your chat rather than
Yeah.
just going off the internet and just searching for something. And we can see this. So now I can type in, yeah, I don't want to do that right now. I can say I'm in Bangalore, suggest some trails around me. And we can click enter over here. um, when you like make your screen to be really big and I can't see the side thing.
Yeah. Happens. Been there.
So the reason it was giving the error was that by default it was using the instruct model, and the instruct model
Mm-hmm.
cannot use these chat APIs. You have to use the turbo model. So now I've switched on
Oh, okay.
to the turbo model.
But that seems like something which Azure itself can already work on, given that we are specifically on the chat blade. Maybe they
Yeah,
can already set the default option to
sure,
turbo.
sure, agreed.
Good feedback. PM, if you're listening, please. And we also got a feedback in the chat from Darshan saying they would like a dark mode. So we already have two feedbacks. Yay.
Okay, so remember how our control message was the give your name. So it's giving its name that it's Forest. And
Mm-hmm.
it's saying, okay, I can suggest you, but tell me what is the intensity you're looking for, right? Because that's what we had provided in our control message. What hiking
Yeah.
intensity are they looking for? Where are they located? What hiking intensity?
Yeah.
So I can now say, okay, let's start with easy. And you can see that it has given exactly 3 recommendations because 3 is what we had suggested over there. And it
Mm-hmm.
says I can go and try any of these. So your chat playground will not only allow you to do a chat completion, it's ultimately calling chat completion, but it's also giving you more control over the chat. So now you can specify where you want to, like the control messages. So you can be the persona what you want. So you could be a persona like, oh, I'm a technical instructor, so you can ask me questions about Python, and then your questions should be limited to this, and you should give only these answers, and it will go ahead and do that based on the control message
Mm-hmm.
that you've given.
Mm-hmm. Is there a
um
way we can break this chatbot though? What happens if there is a user who's asking a question which is beyond what this chatbot has been set for?
Correct. And if
Like,
we do that, it actually goes and returns. So we'll show another example of how to do
mm-hmm.
that. But over here, what I wanted to show was, see, right over here we have a deploy to button. So
Mm-hmm.
this was actually generating code in the background to do all this, right? And so we can click over here and say deploy to a new web app. So
Hmm.
instead of now figuring out how to do all this interface, remember you were asking that, okay, what happens about the interface? Is it made in React? Is it made in HTML, JavaScript, what?
JavaScript, yeah.
And over here, this will automatically generate that interface for you. So if I now
Hmm.
click on the new web app, you will, get an option to create a new web app. And this is again the app service web app. So you can choose your app name, your subscription, your resource group, your location, just like you would do for a normal web app.
Hmm.
And this will go ahead and deploy the code to your web app. And we can see that I have actually deployed the code. So I created a hiking chat app and I've deployed the code over there. And this has created this nice interface, which is much better from that simple app that I had. And now I can ask it the same questions. Well, Reshmi, where are you off to? Kochi?
Uh-huh.
So I am in Kochi, maybe. And now
It's
this
gonna
is
ask again
exactly
about the
this.
difficulty. Yeah.
Yeah, it's exactly the same app that you were seeing in the playground, but now we have got it deployed to your app service. And you didn't
Yeah.
have to write
Yeah.
a single piece of code. It automatically created a nice enough interface for you. Of course, you can customize it if you don't like this,
Yeah.
but like you might want to put your logo instead of Azure AI over here. You might want to customize some of the icons out here, and you can do that by just going to the web app that you deployed. So this is our web app. And in this case, I am going to the back end of the web app, if you will, which we call the Kudu console. So I can go
Mm-hmm.
to, and this is basically your appname.scm.azurewebsites.net. And I'm going to the new UI. And you can click on the file manager over here. Once you click on the file manager, you will see some options over here. So if you click on the site, so this is just nothing but the directory structure of your website. So you can click over here
Mm-hmm.
and you can see that there is a www root folder. You can go to the www root folder and you can see that this has been deployed as a tar file, which means basically it's deployed as a zip file. If
Mm-hmm.
you want to see the content of the zip, it's because we took the content from Azure AI and put it on app service. So the easiest way to do it is just to zip. And if you want to see the content of the zip file, there's this folder which gets automatically, no, not this one. I can go to the site again. There's a repository folder which gets automatically created. And if you go into the repository folder, you will see that this has all the code that is there for your web app. So again, to your
Mhm.
question, can we have some kind of a different front end? This is the front end. So if you look at the front end, it's got the JSON files, which is the various configurations. If you go to the SRC, it has, the CSS files, the TSX files, and you can customize any of these files. Like you want to change a logo, you want to change how it looks and feels, you want to change the colors. This is the place that you can do it. So you can download any of these files, redeploy them, and make your changes.
Awesome. This actually makes everyone's life really easy. There's just one more question around the same, which I would probably like to
Mhm.
hear for anyone who's deploying any sort of chatbot or anything for that matter, right? They would definitely want to keep an eye on the costs that are incurred
Yeah.
related to running these queries on OpenAI, on whatever model for that matter.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
is there like a good way that the developers can check out what is the specific cost that they're incurring for this web app?
Now over here, when we deploy an app like this, there will be several Azure components which are involved in this. So one of the Azure
Mm-hmm.
components is obviously OpenAI. And OpenAI right
Mm-hmm.
now has a single costing plan, which is the standard plan. So if you go to the OpenAI page and you look at their pricing, that's the standard plan that they have. And there's only one plan right now. However, Azure App Service itself, since it's the different service, will have its own costing.
Mm-hmm.
By default, this gets deployed to, you can choose which SKU you want to deploy it. And again, you can go to the pricing page and that will tell you. And, you know, and you can also do something like, do you want to preserve chat history? In that case, you might want to deploy a database which has the chat history. And so as you keep on building your application, you will keep on adding things. These are like Lego bricks, if you will. So
Yeah,
a
yeah,
real application will be, things that you add on and keep on adding on to your application. And if that's what
yeah.
you do, you'll keep on building the cost. But
Mm-hmm.
Azure also provides a pricing calculator,
Mm-hmm.
where you can go ahead, and so the pricing calculator is what some of our marketing teams use, where you can specify which services you want to use, and the pricing calculator will give you a result which is an estimated cost based on the components that you've used. So if you just search
Mm-hmm.
for Azure pricing calculator, that should bring you to the right page, and that is one of the things that you can do for an estimation of what the cost is going to be.
Awesome. I think that would be definitely very helpful in terms of a team deciding to adopt this or not. And we do
Mhm.
have one more question, which is from Darshan. So Darshan's asking, can we restrict access to the deployed chatbot to work only within the organization?
Yes. In fact, when we deploy it by default, so let me go to the deploy button again. You see over here what you see at the top, your web app will be configured with Azure Active Directory authentication enabled. So what it really means is that this web app, the one I've deployed, can only be accessed by people who are in my Azure Active Directory, which is the Microsoft Azure Active Directory. Anybody who is
Mm-hmm.
outside by default will not be able to use it. And that is configured by default.
Okay.
But you can also do things like manage identities. So we provide with Azure App Service, we have a concept called manage identities. And manage identities will allow you to create specific user identities for your services. And they can be shared across multiple Azure services. So you can say
Mm-hmm.
that, I've created this manage Azure identity and only these people can access it. Azure also has a lot of RBAC controls where users can choose, you can choose or limit what people can do with the access. So you can say, okay, you can look at the app, you can browse the app, but maybe you cannot change any settings on the app. And those are things that you can absolutely control with Azure RBAC. So yes, to answer your question, yes, you can absolutely, by default, we will protect it with the basic level authentication, which limits it to your Active Directory. but you can go further and add in as many authentication. You can even add things like a two-factor authentication for your app by like a couple of settings that you can do on your app.
And on the contrary, Tulika, it's also possible that this is kept as open and public as possible, right? Like, for suppose, if I want a chatbot which is running on Wikipedia,
Yeah,
because anyone and everyone who wants to use Wikipedia, they should be able to
sure.
query the chatbot.
Yeah. And if you want to do that, I also want to mention like people will have these concerns that this is a chat, which means you can ask any kind of questions to the chat. Some of those questions may
Hmm.
not be appropriate questions.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
because with Microsoft GPT models, we actually have, and we are, doing responsible AI, we will filter out those questions. We will actually, so if you ask a question which is inappropriate, and you should not be asking, in that case, we will stop it and say, we can't answer that question. So if it has any violent content, if it has inappropriate content, we will actually stop it and not give an answer to those questions. So we have inbuilt mechanisms in our service itself which will make sure that you don't pass in the questions. Except that the
Hmm.
problem is that your software can be creative, but people are more creative than software, because we make the software. So
Yeah, but how about if it was not inappropriate? Like, for suppose, in the current chatbot, it's a hiking chatbot. What if I'm asking food recommendations from this chatbot? Do we expect it to work, or do we expect it to throw out some sort of error message that they cannot process?
let's go ahead and try that. To be frank, I've not tried it, but in this chatbot, I have not limited it. So I'll show you another
Correct.
example where I do limit it, but in this case, I haven't limited it. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to say, give me some food recommendations near me. Oh, nice.
Ah,
So it does say that that is my persona, and therefore I cannot give you food recommendations.
awesome, awesome. I think that is also very important, right? Because you do not want the chatbot to be violated for anything and everything. You kind of like
Yeah,
set the boundaries to which the chatbot should be
correct.
accountable for answering.
Yeah,
So, yeah, this is great. This is good that we tried it out live.
yeah.
Awesome. I
Um,
think we are on time at this point, Tilika. Do you want to like quickly go through the resources, or did you have another app to present?
I have one more app, and I promise it's going
Okay.
to be really quick. I keep on saying that. Um,
I told you it needs to be a game. Yeah, go for
so
it. Yeah.
what I wanted to do show you was, and a lot of people have this question, that's why I wanted to answer it. You have absolutely the ability to add your own data. So remember how we were saying that I can give a system message and you can control something, but this is not on your data. Let's say that you had your company data and you want your bot to only work on that data and not everything else. So in that case, you can add your own data source and you can have your chatbot just work on your data source rather than going off on the internet and working on something else. So if I click on chat data source, I can specify a data source, which could be blob storage if you have something in there. It could be a Cosmos DB or a MongoDB. It could be even a web address. So like you were mentioning, what if my data source is just Wikipedia? So I could specify a web address. I can even upload files over here. In that case, it will be just restricted to the data source that you have specified. And that's extremely useful if, for example, you want to build a chatbot which is specific to your organization. You don't want it to go off somewhere else on the internet and try to find some information for you. So what I've done
Makes
in
sense.
my example is, so this takes a couple of minutes to build the data source, so I'm not going to do it live. I have built a chatbot. So what I did was I took some PDF files. I created my own company called Northwind. I created some HR policies for Northwind, and I uploaded it to a storage account. Once you've done that, you also have to create an Azure search service, which is part of cognitive services, which will go ahead and index that data that you have uploaded. And now you can specify, link that data to your chatbot, and you can have it only query that database. So, for example, this is my Northwind application. And again, this is a chatbot. So I'm going to ask it a question. Uh, what are the health plans offered by Northwind? And see, now I had a fictional company, right? So I have a company called
Mm-hmm.
Contoso, and it had the documents for Contoso, and it's saying, okay, based on what you input, you have two health plans from Contoso, a standard plan and a health plus. It is giving you whatever the benefits. It's even giving you a reference. And if you go and
Mm-hmm.
look at that reference, this is the PDF file that I input. So I can go ahead and
Mm-hmm.
look at the PDF file, which I had input in the storage account, and that's where your chat is working. So you're now limiting
Yeah.
your chat to whatever input that you have given. And I could,
Awesome.
ask it a random question now. Uh,
Food
like,
recommendation. Let's go.
yeah, suggest some food recommendations near me. And it will say, okay, the information is not found in the retrieved data because it didn't even go out on the internet and try to get that information. Otherwise it would
Yes.
have, if you were just building an unbounded chat, if you will. And if you want to
Yes.
learn a little bit more about models like this where we use the search API, there's an excellent repo which is available called Azure Search OpenAI Demo, and
Mm-hmm.
this will allow you. So I picked this up from this demo. This demo is much more complex, but if you look at it, what it does is it creates an app UX, it creates the orchestrator, it looks at prompts, and you build your own knowledge base, and then it uses cognitive services to actually give you the response. So if you just want to learn on how you can control your chat, and how do you do like organizational or enterprise chat, this is a really good example to get started with it.
Awesome. I'm hoping the link to this has been shared as well, right?
I do not think, I recently found it's a new repo.
Ah, okay. Okay.
So
Maybe you can just post it in the chat and people can check it out in
yeah,
their
I'll,
own
I'll
good
just
time.
post it in just a little bit.
Awesome. Cool. So I think Tulika, in terms of like trying to cover the breadth of Azure OpenAI and all the things that we can play around with it, I think a couple sessions is probably not enough. We know
Yeah.
for a fact that there are more and more things coming while we are speaking. So I think what we discussed today is definitely a great start for anyone who is trying to explore OpenAI and wanting to have a better and a seamless way to create an application while making sure that they are not sabotaging or sacrificing their data protection concerns, or making sure like the data quality is retained, making sure we do not entertain inappropriate content, all of that sorts, right? So I think all those things put together, we are at a good place. There is just one more parting question I had from you,
Mhm.
which probably you do not have an answer to at this point of time, but nevertheless, so, what we do basically with all these kind of data and like the kind of security and the storage that we are promising, I'm sure that the data is not being refreshed at a very fast pace, right? Like every time a new version of the chat GPT comes or anything of that sort, it's definitely going to take some time. And again, it takes some more time, like what Darshan had asked, to get it out there and released in Azure or in OpenAI for that matter. So, how does a person take a trade-off call to have some sort of chat GPT induced chat for something which probably is live and evolving versus relying on something like a Bing Chat, for suppose, which is also powered by AI, which could
Mhm.
probably give you more up to date and latest content. How do you probably, like, you might have given it a thought, so maybe
Mhm.
we can just hear on that and then we can call it a
So
day.
if you are going to, like, if you want a chat experience, or if you want to use one of the GPT, so let's go and say that if you want to use a GPT model, using the
Mm-hmm,
Bing chat is the most reliable one, because the
mm-hmm,
Bing chat is out there. We recently, the GPT for the Bing chat is not in preview; it's GA now, which means that you can absolutely go ahead and use Bing chat if you want to in any of your applications. The only limitation, well, not a limitation, the Bing chat, as the name suggests, is actually looking at the entire internet of data. So it's
mm-hmm,
basically, if you ask it for food recommendations to the Bing chat, you know that Bing chat will go and find you food recommendations. There is
mm-hmm.
very little that you can do to limit where Bing chat will go in. Now, if you use the
Got it.
Azure OpenAI, and Bing Chat internally will use app OpenAI, but of course, its scope is much wider. But if you're
Mm-hmm.
talking about enterprise scenarios where you probably want much more control over the data which is being returned, in that case, I would think that using the OpenAI resources directly in your applications would be a safer bet, because now you have complete control. As you saw, you can control how your chat behaves. You can control like who can access it, so it's not open to the world. You can control what data it filters on. So it's always a trade-off between how much control you want
Yeah.
and or how fast you want to do development. If you want it to be really really fast, in that case, yeah, Bing chat absolutely works. But if you want more
Yeah.
control over the data, if you want to make sure that you are using some of the techniques we provide, like an Azure AD integration, managed identity integration, you want to connect with multiple services, then probably using the Azure OpenAI resources directly is the right way to go.
Makes sense, yeah. I think you have put it in very well. I have thoughts along the same lines, but I really love to throw this question to all the leaders out there, because every person has a different opinion or a different view to the same problem that they bring up to. So thank you so much for giving your thoughts on that. And as a farewell note, I think we do have one of our active viewers give a comment on the experience of Chat Playground. So I'll just give it a call out. So Darshan again mentions that Chat Playground is great, and I use it to quickly prototype prompts for my chatbots, and it makes it easy to try different parameters and fine tune the responses. So, thank you so much for this feedback, Darshan. I think this means a lot for everyone in the Azure PM team and the developer team for Chat Playground, because they have put their heart and mind and soul to make sure that the product that they are working on is helping the end customers. So, really, really looking forward to more inputs and feedbacks from you and from the rest of the folks who are there in this call. So, once again, thank you everyone who has participated in this session. The links are shared in the chat. They will again be uploaded in the description. And Tulika, you owe me a drink because we have again crossed the timeline. So yeah. But yeah. So thank you so much and have a good day all. Talk to you all very soon. Bye bye.
Bye.